Keep L here. Last week, whenever I taught, I gave an example and I offered her $1. I said, you can have this $1 this week, or if you want to hold up, I'll give you a present so much greater next week. And I was trying to make the example of that's what God does with us. Like the world will offer us things that have very little value, and that we'll often take that instead of taking this prize that is to come. Well, so Josie, this whole week, you could tell her mind was set on this prize. She was just like looking forward to it. She was always asking, when do I get this? When do I get this? And even this whole week, she was just so excited to get this. And then for us, that should be our mind when we're focused on Christ and the thing to come. It should be that our mind is focused on this prize to come, this salvation to come. And in that, all these other hard things in life will pass away because you're focused on this prize that's so much greater than all the things the world offers you. So this was her prize I was going to give to her. I was going to let her open it in front of you guys because you got to see the first part. So you can go ahead. So was it worth the wait?
Yeah.
Have the $1. It looks like I picked the wrong present. Do you like it? Oh, you can take it with you up there. Well, that ruined the whole picture. I guess no matter what I was thinking today, I thought about wrapping up a Bible for her to give to her because it'd be something that is eternal instead of something that is essentially valueless inside this time to come. But I was really hoping she'd be super excited about getting that, but she wasn't. So hopefully that's not our hearts.
Did she say no? I couldn't see. Didn't say anything. All right. All right, good morning. Shabbat shalom. I can actually see people in the back. I got these things that, new invention, glasses. Finally got some, lets me see. Used to, it was just a blur back there. I hope everybody's doing all right this morning. I just want to up front encourage everybody on the July 3rd deal. If you know some people that aren't coming or have come and have left, we're really trying to reach out to those people and say, hey, come back on July 3rd and hopefully rejoin the community of God. When we go to Leviticus 23, we have the list, and we all know the chapter. We have the list of all the convocations, what we call holy convocations, the feast days, the days of publicly coming together in a public space with the community of God to worship God. And every Friday, as you say the blessings, if you say the traditional blessings, and you pour the cup of wine to set apart the day of Sabbath for God, the blessing is, thank you, God, for giving us your holy Sabbath, the first of all holy convocations. So sometimes we end up, as much as we talk disparagingly against our brothers and sisters in other denominations, we do the same thing. Just like we talk about them, how people come on Christmas and Easter only, and then throughout the year they're just not found. We do the same thing. People show up for Passover and Sukkot. And so we want to encourage everybody to realize that the first of all holy convocations, mentioned first in Leviticus 23, is his weekly Sabbath, that we're to come together publicly and communally weekly. So this week we've got a message called Misplaced Honor. And we can kind of see the direction of the message based on the picture here and the binding and the bondage that self-worship does. And what does that mean? We'll talk about that. But the binding that self-worship does to us, not just in our personal lives, but in our spiritual lives as well. And this week's portion, as Will so eloquently read like he does every week, is Korah's rebellion. Korah's rebellion. So what is this? This is a rebellion. This rebellion took place as an affront to the authority that God had given to his leadership in Israel. Moses had been put in place. Aaron as his spokesperson for him, the mouth that would speak for him at a time. And a certain amount of people came and they didn't like what God had set up. And so, who are our key players here? So we got Moses, and when we think about the background of Moses and the situation, we have Moses, a person who refused to obey God in the initial situation. When God calls him from the burning bush and says, you're going to go back to Egypt, you're going to deliver my people, and I'm going to use you to lead them out, and you're going to show them where to go and how to act. Moses says, not me, dude. Sorry. You better find somebody else. I can't even speak right. And God tells him again, no, dude, like you're going to do this. And Moses fights back again. And the first time in the scriptures that we see an instance of God becoming angry is in response to Moses' refusal to do what God has called him to do. Moses finds himself in the place of leadership over Israel, not because he wanted to be there, but quite the opposite. He fought against it and made God mad. And what about Aaron? Aaron finds his place in Israel's leadership through Moses' disobedience. God finally says, all right, Moses, I understand your arguments here. If you think you can't speak, fine. Take your brother with you and let him speak for you. Aaron gets thrown into a mix of leadership that he didn't even ask for. He wasn't even there at the burning bush. Both of these people are placed in leadership in a situation over Israel through no selfish or personal desire for that leadership role. And then we have Korah. I don't know, somebody took off the top part of my H there. It's not Koran, it's Korah. We have Korah. This person has come, and if I can just suggest what I think happened here, and the text isn't exactly as clear, this is the ringleader, which is what the text does want you to think. But I think that the offense started with this person, and this person spread his offense to other people. And he finds Dathan and Abiram, and who are they but sons of Reuben? Reuben, who was the firstborn. Reuben, who by the means of the world around him should have been the person to lead the family moving forward. And by the time we get to Reuben, by the time we get to these people, we've already had a few instances where not the firstborn, but the second, right? Not the firstborn, but the last. We've had a few instances of this already where it's not the firstborn that we would think should be taking over the leadership role of the family, but someone else. Does Dathan and Abiram, do they have some type of offense here that's been passed down? We deserve to be in leadership over this. And then we have these 250 chieftains. Not much is said about them, but we have these people that are already in some type of role of leadership who say, we don't like the leadership that's in place. So let's look at the verse here. Numbers 16 gives us our issue, or the issue that they bring. They came together against Moses and Aaron and told them, you have gone too far, Moses and Aaron. You've taken it too far. You've pushed the envelope too much. You have taken your role too seriously. Everyone in the entire community is holy, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the Lord's assembly? What did Dathan and Abiram say? Is it not enough that you brought us up from the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? Do you also have to appoint yourself as a ruler over us? So what are their issues? What are their main contentions here? Of course, it says everyone's holy, right? Everyone's holy. You think that you're better than us, but you're not. You're the same as us. You walked across the same desert. You walked across the same sea. You were brought out and redeemed by God the same way we were. How dare you place yourself up to be better than us? And then why did you lead us away from the comforts of the place in which we left so that we would die here in the wilderness in a place that we can't stand? These are our two issues, and we can almost have a little bit of empathy with the first one for sure. Go back to Exodus 19. This is one of my favorite. I love this passage. Now, if you will carefully listen to me and keep my covenant, you will be my own possession. This is the CSB, and I love this version, but I don't like their translation of Segala here. It's not that we aren't his own possession, but I would say you will be my treasured possession. I'm sure some of your translations say that. My treasured possession. God says you are special to me. You are someone that I'm bringing along that is closer to me than other possessions, other peoples. Although the whole earth is mine, and you will be a kingdom of priests in my holy nation. These are the words that you're to say to the Israelites. I mean, is Korah not just saying back the same thing that Moses told them at Mount Sinai, at the base of Mount Sinai? Is Korah not reiterating the words of God? Hold up, we're all supposed to be priests here. We're all a holy convocation. We are all a segala, a treasured people. There are different views about why the priesthood became the Levites, and I don't want to get into it here too much, but one says that the new priesthood, that means that the Levites were brought in to be the priests above all other firstborn males, or however we think it should have run, that those Levites were brought in and God placed them in their place as a response to the golden calf. The golden calf happened, and Aaron allows it to happen. He feels the pressure from the people. The golden calf gets built, and then from that point forward, Aaron, you and your sons will be priests. Or it could just be a misplaced understanding of what God meant for the nation of Israel at the base of Mount Sinai in Exodus 19. Was he literally saying that everyone in the nation of Israel would serve in his temple continuously? If so, what else would get done? If so, how else would the society? God's building a nation here, not a house full of people to simply serve in his house every day. He's building a nation that would operate. If everyone was to be serving in the same manner as Moses and Aaron, how could that nation operate? So whether we think that the priesthood came as a response to the golden calf, or they simply were misunderstanding the words in Exodus 19, the implication is still the same. They were taking what God said and what God had done and saying that it wasn't good enough. I personally favor the first one there, where the priesthood is a response to the golden calf. And if that's the case here, how much more is it flipped upside down when they say that Moses and Aaron have placed themselves, when the whole point of the priesthood in that situation would be not a blessing, not a place of honor for the priest, but a place of punishment and a place of, that's a bad way to put it, but it was a response to something that had been done bad. Not something that was self-seeking or boasting. But in any means, no matter how we look at it, what they're saying is God, one way or another, has placed these people in leadership, and it wasn't good enough for them. They thought that something should be done differently. There's a couple of things here wrong with the whole scenario and the story, and the first one here is that they have created this mob mentality, right? The text doesn't clearly state exactly how this offense spread throughout the camp, but you get an indication through context that this started with one person and spread out to a couple more, spread out to 250 more. This mob mentality is not a biblical mentality that these people had had put into place. Fast forward to the New Testament, we're given rules and rules is a bad word as well. We're given guidance on how to address issues within our communities, and this ain't it. The guidance that we're given on how to address issues is that if I have a problem with Nathan, that I, Matt, go to Nathan. I don't collectively bring as many people out of this room as I can and then come up here and grandstand against Nathan as a means of expressing my contempt. These people were taking on the offense of others. We don't even really understand the 250 and what their offense was, other than they just didn't like what Moses and Aaron had been placed to do. But you get the sense that they had taken on the offense of the few. Talked about offense a couple of weeks ago. If offense comes your way, the New Testament says, Jesus says, if the offense comes your way, I pray that it not take hold of you. These people had misplaced honor. Because who is the one, the entire point of bringing the nation of Israel out of Egypt was not to honor Moses or Aaron, was not to honor the people that were set free. It was not to honor those who didn't lose their firstborn, but it was to honor and glorify God. So on both sides of the situation, they're both misplacing the honor of themselves because they've thought of themselves of being worthy of something greater in their minds. But they've also misplaced the honor on Moses and Aaron themselves. By saying that they have placed themselves ahead of them, they viewed their specific purpose in the kingdom of God as being something higher and lofty. When neither one of them wanted to be in that position, and the entire purpose is that they represent God and push people towards the honor and glorification of God Himself. Jealousy and envy have brought them to this place. They've become jealous of the roles, and I love that word in this context, and really in the context of the kingdom, in the context of marriage, in the context of our homes and our communities. They've misplaced the honor of God based on their jealousy and envy towards different roles within the kingdom. They've thought to themselves, we deserve something more than what we have been given. We deserve a better place and a better status than what God has placed us in. This jealousy and envy has led them to place honor on God, on Moses and Aaron and the positions they're in, and themselves above God Himself. They've removed God from the equation and said that He has no control in His own nation. A nation that He brought out of bondage from a mighty nation of Egypt. A nation that He led through the wilderness and created all of these miracles for. God now is no longer in control, and human will and power has taken over God's nation. Their jealousy and envy has led them to this place in their mind. It has clouded their vision. In the very words that the two say against Moses and Aaron, they say that, have you brought us out here into the wilderness to die? Forgetting the fact that God Himself led them by fire and by a pillar of smoke. That God Himself opened the Red Sea and that God Himself led His people out into the wilderness. This jealousy and this envy is a root of a complete disregard for God's great and mighty works in their own very lives. They've seen things that you and I have never seen of God and His work in the world. Things that we read about and we express as our history every single year through the Passover celebration. And they have disregarded God's hand in those works. Go forward to James. In the New Testament, he talks about this envy and this deceit and this selfish ambition. He says, but if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't boast and deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil practice. Some tough words, because has anyone in this room ever fell victim to the passions, and I say passions, the passions of jealousy and envy? I know I have. How scary is it now to read this verse that says that whenever you do this, this wisdom is not from God, but from earthly, unspiritual, and demonic sources. that to give in to selfish ambition and envy and jealousy is to create disorder and every evil practice. I know just recently in my workplace, I've discussed with several people about things that have gone on. Just recently, the lesson I've learned in my workplace is having to look at myself in the mirror and say, and reassess my personal view of what I felt that I deserved and needed. This week I find myself in the very shoes of Korah himself just a month or two ago, saying, I deserve something more than what I have. How often can we fall victim and fall into the same trap that Korah and the people that followed after him fell into? We look at these stories and we read them and we say, they were such a horrible and rebellious people, but we do the same thing. There have been people who have left fellowship with this community, with this congregation, based on their idea of what they deserved as a role within this community. They have literally said, I did not receive the honor I thought I deserved. And I did the same thing just a couple of months ago. Not here, but in my workplace. When we do this, we worship ourselves. We place ourselves above others. We place ourselves above the greater good of the community and congregation that God has established. And we place ourselves above God. Because if there's anything that we have attained in life, if we ever try to say that that's our own personal gain, we have done the same thing that they did in disregarding God's hand in the work of His community and kingdom. If there's any accomplishment in life that I do and I turn around and say, I did this and I deserve this, then I have totally fallen into the same mindset of Korah and his rebellious gang of thugs. Someone we look down on every single year as we go through these portions and we say, how dare they not honor God in that way? We do the same thing. And I place myself above God. When I say, God, the place that you have put me, the status that you have given me in life is not good enough. I'm totally taking God out of the equation. I've now allowed the envy and the jealousy that wants to well up from within me as I look around at other people. I've allowed it to control my life, and I've now opened the door for every evil thing. I want to share another story that I think is applicable from a different sense. It's Eli and his sons. Eli and his sons. So I'm studying 1 Samuel on a couple of fronts. Studying it with a small group on Sunday evening in Zoom. If anybody wants to join that, I could definitely get you the link. And then studying, I'm taking a whole semester on 1 and 2 Samuel. So as I was reading Korah this year, I was brought to Eli and his sons and the situation, but from a little different perspective. And when we start 1 Samuel, we have chapter 1. This is the chapter that everybody knows of with Hannah, who dedicates and says, God, if you will give me a son, I will dedicate him to your service for his entire life. Chapter 2 starts with Hannah's beautiful song as she praises God and tells him all the praise of the things that he's done, but also relays how God is in charge. Basically the opposite of what Korah and them were saying. God is in charge. He will make the lofty brought low. He will make the rich poor. He will make the poor wealthy. And then after that, we're introduced to Eli's sons. It says, well, it doesn't say anything because my board just crashed. But it calls them a wicked, I'll look in just a second. Nope, y'all trying to help me out and I'm fighting against you, aren't I? There we go. Eli's sons were wicked men. They were wicked men. They did not respect Yahweh. They did not respect the Lord. It says they were sons of Belial. They had no inkling of who God was. Why is this important to understand, or why should this be significant? Why is this little verse right here so simple? Eli's sons were wicked men, they did not respect the Lord. Well, we got a big problem here because Eli's sons are priests. Eli's sons are serving in the temple every single day. Eli's sons should, above all other people in Israel, should know the Lord. But the text tells us they were wicked men and they did not know the Lord. My thing's trying to update. I apologize. All right. They were true priests. And what did they do? What was their sin? Right after it tells us, here we go, right after it tells us that they were wicked men and didn't know the Lord, it gives us this story of what they were doing as they were priests. It says that they were going in. If someone, Derek, comes to the temple and says, I want to bring a free will offering to God. I've been blessed by God. My family is doing amazing. God has blessed us immensely. I'm going to bring a free will offering to God. I'm going to bring my whole family, all my servants, and I'm going to bring some food, and we're going to sit down and dine with God. Do you know that's the purpose of most sacrifices in the Old Testament? Was so that you would come and dine at God's table, that you would offer it to God and then sit down and literally eat with God and eat with His priests. And Leviticus tells the priests, it says, when people come, when Derek comes and wants to offer this offering to you, offer it up to me, give them their portion, and you, the priest, take the leftovers. You, the priest, get the last portion. Make sure that they are able to eat with me, and then you eat with them, but you get the last portion. Eli and his sons, what were they doing? They were taking the first. They weren't just taking the first. They weren't taking off the top, right? Because that's what they were doing. They offer it to God. God apportions it out, and they get their portion. They're taking a larger cut because they're taking from the front. And not only that, they're going in, and they're taking the best cuts of the meat. They're saying, hey, I want the prime ribeye, right? Why were they doing this? Well, it tells us that they're wicked men, but if I had to guess, there's a little bit of jealousy and self-worship in their motivations. At some point, they came to a place in their life where they said, we deserve more than what God has given us. We deserve more than what God has put in place. We're priests. We get to worship every day. God has provided for our means without us having to labor like everyone else in Israel. But you know what? When God says, I get what's at the end of the portion, I think I deserve what's at the beginning. I think I deserve the best and the most premium cuts of this meat that God has had Derek bring into the temple. My opinion, I think there's just a little bit of self-worship and jealousy in this. And again, we see this misplaced honor. Because they aren't even taking this from the point that it's been offered to God and now it's being taken off the altar and prepared for the meal. No, they're taking this. It's raw meat. They're taking this before it is even offered to God. Their misplaced honor is that they have placed honor on themselves above God. They said, I deserve not only more than what this Israelite, what Derek's bringing in for his family, I deserve more than what God Himself gets. I'm going to take from God's offering before it's ever even offered to God. I deserve the honor before God Himself. Verse 17 says, so the servant's sin was very severe in the presence of the Lord because, why? The men treated the Lord's offering with contempt. That's a pretty serious sin. When we break it down and you really look at what they did, that seems to be a very serious, severe sin. If you're taking from God before the people of God can offer it, that's pretty bad. But where do we go from here? After this, in the text, it gives you a section, a small few verses on Samuel, and it's doing that intentionally. It breaks up the narrative of Eli's sons with the narrative of Samuel just kind of interrupts the text. Samuel butts in where it doesn't seem it belongs, but God is showing you, He's putting these two narratives together, interweaving them so that we would compare the righteous behavior of Samuel versus the unrighteous behavior of Eli's sons. And after it tells us about Samuel and how he was continuously going in to go before God, and his mom was making him a robe every year of his life, then we get to this verse 22. Now Eli was very old. He heard about everything his sons were doing to all of Israel, and how they were, how they were sleeping with the women who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Now wait a minute, their sin was grievous because they took from God what was deserved to Him, right? They were stealing from the offerings that Derek was bringing to them. But here, just a few verses later, Eli's heard what they're doing. They're sleeping with all the women in front of the tent of meeting. It's not the only time this happens, right? It's not that they're doing things like adultery or fornication. It's not that they're being sexually immoral in general, but they're doing it in the face of God in His house. Pinchas sees this at one point, Phinehas, and what does he do? He drives a spear through the two that are doing this. This isn't just sin and sexual immorality. This is egregious sin in the face of God. And we shouldn't be surprised, right? Because we just read this verse a few minutes ago. Such wisdom, when you allow jealousy and envy and selfish ambition to overcome you, such wisdom does not come from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil practice. I think James, when he wrote this letter, you think maybe he had read the scriptures a few times, and because this isn't the only example, right? When we see people seeking selfish ambition and being jealous and envious of where God has placed them and others, these other evil practices are just going to follow. A few verses later in the text it says, and he said to them, this is Eli, he's speaking to his sons, he says, why are you doing these things? I've heard about your evil actions from all these people. No, my sons, the news I hear from the Lord's people spreading is not good. If one person sins against another, God can intercede for him, but if a person sins against the Lord, who can intercede? But they would not listen to their father, since the Lord intended to kill him. So Eli hears about this. Do we think that Eli doesn't already know? Do we think, these are Eli's sons. Eli's operating as the head honcho. Eli's sons are operating in the temple doing these things, and it's not until he becomes old that he finally realizes and hears the word of Israel that these two sons of his, these knuckleheads, are doing these horrible things. There's an issue, right? And he talks to them, and we can be inclined as we're reading the story to think, well, that's good. He addressed it, right? He addressed the issue. But it stopped there. They didn't listen. They didn't listen to what he said. Can we have sympathy on his situation a little bit, right? Because most of us in this room have children, and how hard is it at times, especially as they're older, would it be to address their children's bad behavior? This isn't Malachi for me, right? I can easily direct Malachi's behavior if he does something wrong. These are adult sons that are probably in their 40s or 50s or 60s, right? Even as an adult for me, whenever I graduated high school and moved out of my house, my parents, my dad especially, who didn't agree with some of the things I was doing, he even then had a hard time coming to me and saying, you better change what you're doing because it's not leading in a good path. And he speaks to his sons something we think would be good. There's been times even here where I've been quick to say, you know what, I'll handle this issue really fast. And I say something about it, but that's it. And does that really fix the issue? When we look at Moses and his response to Korah and the rebellion versus Eli and his response, do we see a difference? Same mentality, right? misplaced honor. People have placed honor on themselves or other people above God. But what is the response? Do we see a difference in response? Number 16 says Moses heard this and he fell on his face. Some people think this is an emotional response, like Moses is so upset that they would come against him that he fell on his face. No. I believe Moses fell on his face in prayer. Moses' first response wasn't to defend himself, wasn't to get all up in arms about what was going on, but he fell on his face and went to God. And when he comes back up, he knows exactly what to do, right? When he comes back up, he says, this is exactly what's going to happen, all right? Y'all go do this, we'll meet back, we'll see what happens. He falls on his face and seeks God, and God tells him what to do. What's the response of Eli? He talked to his sons, but he did nothing. Later on in 1 Samuel, it says, out of all the tribes, this is God, he sends a certain man, to come speak to Eli and prophesy to him about his future and the future of his family. He says, out of all the tribes of Israel, I chose your house to be my priest. Because from Eleazar all the way down to Eli, it has continuously been his family that has been the high priest. Out of all the tribes, I chose your house to be my priest, to offer sacrifices on my altar, to burn incense and to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your forefathers' family all the Israelite food offerings. Why then do you despise my sacrifice and offerings that I require at the place of worship? You have honored your sons more than me by making yourselves fat with the best part of all the offerings of my people Israel. God says, why do you despise me and honor your sons? You could almost think Eli got a tough break here, right? I mean, he tried to address it. He tried to talk to his sons, but his sons have been doing this all their lives. God says, why do you despise me and honor yourselves? Why have you taken what belongs to me? Why have you argued against what I have put in place to honor yourselves? A few verses later, God tells about how he is going to raise up the faithful priest for himself. Sometimes, and I've experienced this in my own life, my own walk, I've experienced it here, Nathan and I and Layman. Sometimes if we just don't act, God himself will act. If we don't act, God himself will act. I was talking about the story of Jacob and Esau earlier this week, and Melissa and I watched a movie, Christian movie on Netflix. I forgot what it was called. But there's a pastor in there, and he gives an analogy, and I'm not real big on analogies because they usually fall short of truly expressing the truth of Scriptures. But I like this analogy. He said, sometimes when it comes to your walk with God, it's like God is the GPS. And he's telling you to take a left turn and you take a right. And you can go down there as long as you want to, but to get to that destination, he'll just keep telling you to make a U-turn, turn around, turn around, turn around. That's what he does with Jacob. That's what I was expressing with Jacob earlier this week, was that did Jacob have to take the 20-year wandering to come all the way back and go through all the deceit of Laban and all that? Or did he suffer the consequence of his own deception of his father? Here, God says, I placed you in a place to serve me continuously. But that's all right. We'll reroute the car. You've taken us on a path that's gone down a wrong direction, Eli. You and your sons have led Israel to a place where they don't belong. Don't worry. We're going to put a new driver. He'll hear the GPS and turn back around. All of this, at the heart of all of this is the overwhelming misplaced honor of people saying that they're either better than each other or they're better than God, which is more serious. And when we take a look back, I listed here, and this is just my paraphrase of 10 Commandments. So when we look back at the 10 Commandments, and we discussed this many times I've probably discussed this with everybody in this room before, the 10 Commandments and how they're broken down, how the first few, they relate to your relationship with God, and the last ones relate to your relationship with people. It's not that we shouldn't honor our father and mother. It's not that we shouldn't honor each other by not doing things like murder and stealing and committing adultery. It's not that we shouldn't honor each other and honor our parents and our children, but it's that first and foremost, we need to recognize that He is the Lord our God. And that any honor that's placed can never compete with or be higher than the honor given to God. Matthew 23, this section here where Yeshua speaks against the Pharisees and the scribes. We've heard this many times, but He's dealing with the same spirit that Moses dealt with in the wilderness, the same spirit that God was having to handle with Eli and his sons. Yeshua spoke to the crowds and his disciples, and He said the scribes and Pharisees are seated in the chair of Moses. Lots of discussion about what the chair of Moses is. If we're completely honest, we don't exactly know. There's about 6 of them in archaeology. They're all in synagogues, and they're all facing towards the temple. No text tells us exactly what they were saying or teaching while they were sitting there. But at any rate, Yeshua is saying, these scribes and Pharisees, they're seated in the chair of Moses. Therefore, do what they tell you to do and observe it. But don't do what they do because they don't practice what they teach. A lot of times we try to take this section and make it about something it's not. Hypocrisy is the issue here. Hypocrisy is the issue. But why were these people acting this way? Well, we keep reading. They tie up heavy loads that are hard to carry and put them on people's shoulders. To an Israelite, to the people that Yeshua is speaking to, what should that remind them of? The Passover, the Exodus story. These people had become Pharaoh. These people had become those who bound up our fathers and enslaved them to their own service. These people who are supposed to be the leaders have now become the oppressors. But they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move it. They do everything to be seen by others. When we talk about doing everything to be seen by others, what is that? They do things only to present honor to themselves. Misplaced honor. They enlarge their phylacteries, lengthen their tassels. Is it bad that they wore phylacteries or tassels? No, right? We've had this discussion. Probably a lot of you have had this discussion with family members, friends, right? Nowhere does it say that tassels are bad, that tassels shouldn't be done. But they enlarge them. They make them in a way to say, mine are better than yours. We're more holy than you. They love the place of honor at banquets, the front seats in the synagogues. The people that Yeshua was speaking against were those who had a horrible sense of misplaced honor. They were people who were supposed to be pointing people towards God, but instead were pointing people towards themselves. Later in 2 Thessalonians, and I almost didn't include this because I thought it was a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think so. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about the man of perdition or the man of sin, the man of lawlessness who will come at the end of the age, right? And it says, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the apostasy comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, a man doomed to destruction. I don't want to talk about who I think this is. It's the next verse that I think is important to our discussion. He opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he sits in God's temple proclaiming that he himself is God. There's lots of end times prophecies. There's that take this verse in all kinds of direction. Do I think that someone has to literally sit in a temple that is dedicated to Yahweh, the God of Israel, for this to be fulfilled? No. But do I think that someone will come and express that he is greater than God? Absolutely. And I included this verse because when we exalt ourselves and we say that we deserve more than what God has given us, we've placed ourselves in the same position as the son of perdition, as the lawless one in 2 Thessalonians 2. When we say that we deserve more than what we have, or when we say that our position in God's kingdom is not good enough, we might as well sit in God's temple on His throne and say, I'm God. I want to finish up going through we've got time, kind of a lengthy portion in Philippians. This is a letter written by Paul to the brothers and sisters in Philippi. And he's encouraging them. And as we go through chapter 1, we're not going to go through chapter 1, we're going to start in chapter 2. But as we go through chapter 1, we see a hint that Paul's trying to address something that's about to happen or could happen. What is that? Division amongst his believers. Division amongst God's believers. It's not there yet, but the whole point of the letter of Philippians is that Paul is encouraging the people to come together for one accord so that they would stay of one mind for the purpose of God's kingdom. He sees strife and contention coming against each other. He sees these different people. He doesn't name them. He sees people that have the propensity to lift themselves against others and cause this division. In chapter 1, he says, I pray that you would have a character, I'm paraphrasing here, I pray that you would have a character and actions that are befitting of the gospel of Jesus Christ. When he sees division coming, he says, I pray that you would remember that which God gave us as an example when He took upon flesh and dwelt amongst us. And then we get into chapter 2, and that's where we'll park for the rest of the morning here. If then, so after he's already addressed this need to be of one accord, to be of the mind of Messiah, to be like Yeshua, if then there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort in Christ, if in your community there's any comfort of Christ, any comfort of the Messiah, if any of you, just one, has any inkling of that comfort that is found only in Yeshua, if any have the consolation of love. What does this mean? This is speaking good to each other. If there are a few of you just a few that would speak good to each other and peaceably, if any have fellowship with the Spirit of God, if there are any of you that follow God through the leading of His Spirit, and if any of you have affection and mercy. Affection is a good word. I don't know that it does it justice. This word for affection is like tender lovingness. Our world today wants men like me and Caleb and Will and Nathan to have this warrior mentality. And I'm not saying the Bible doesn't call for a sense of that. But we're to have tender lovingness. Men and women. Tender lovingness towards each other. And mercy. What would happen for Paul if he sees a community that some of these things are happening? He says, make my joy complete by thinking the same way, having the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. Spread all of those things. These 4 things that I've listed to you, spread those amongst your community. Tender lovingness and mercy. The comfort that is only found in Yeshua. The leading of the Holy Spirit. Spread those things in your community. And then what? He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. Has anybody in here totally mastered the art of humility, biblical humility? I got my glasses on, I can see now. I think every single year I have more and more lessons of humility. That's one thing, Nate, I think for probably 15 years we've talked about is our lessons in humility all the time, like completely being humbled over and over again. Just when you think like, okay, God, you've broken me of all my pride. No, not even close. Not even close. Paul says, do nothing out of selfish ambition. Not, hey, this thing over here that you probably think you deserve, like you can do that out of selfish ambition, but as long as everybody thinks you're not selfish or as long as everybody thinks you're not prideful, no. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit. But in humility, consider yourselves more important. Consider others more. I got really confused there for a second. Consider others as more important than yourselves. The complete opposite of Korah. The complete opposite of Eli's sons. The complete opposite of the Pharisees and the scribes that Yeshua is speaking to in Matthew 23. In complete and utter humility, think of every single person around you as better than you. Everyone should look not to his own interest, but rather to the interests of others. Like I probably fail at this every week. At some point during the week, I thought of myself and my own interest over someone else's. At some point. In my own family, in my workplace, here, in my friendships. At some point, if I'm completely honest, I probably have thought of myself. And it's something as simple as, what if my daughter comes and wants me to read a book, but I'm in the middle of a TV show? You know? Something as simple as that. It creeps in. It slides in very subtly. And he continues, adopt the same attitude as Yeshua, our Messiah. The same attitude. Well, that's easy. Just adopt his attitude, right? He could have just stopped there. Hey, I've preached in your town. I've already been there. You know what to expect. I need you to have the same attitude as Yeshua, our Messiah. No, then he goes into one of the most beautiful passages of the New Testament and his relation of Yeshua as the perfect example of humility amongst his brothers and sisters. He says, who, existing in the form of God, did not consider equality with God as something to be exploited. As someone who had every right to say, I deserve all the honor that you would give me, chose not to. We have stories upon stories from the beginning, from Genesis 1 all the way through, of people who thought of themselves as worthy of something. Go all the way back to the garden. Adam and Eve, in some sense, thought that they deserved to have the same mentality as God. They thought they deserved to see what God saw. The one who could justifiably say, I deserve this honor, chose not to. Instead, he emptied himself by assuming the form of a servant, taking on the likeness of humanity, and when he had come as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even to death on a cross. He completely humbled himself. Like when we think about it, I don't even know that I can fathom it. And I've said it so many times. God humbled himself greater than anybody could by taking upon flesh. God, the creator of the universe, took upon flesh, dwelt amongst us, lived amongst our filth, walked amongst our sin, and I still don't think I can fully grasp what that means. I still don't think I can fully understand the humility that Yeshua had in that moment. And he was obedient to the point of death, even to death on a cross. For this reason, God highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Yeshua every knee will bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And every tongue will confess that Yeshua, our Messiah, is Adonai, is Lord. Yeshua, Messiah, is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. What's the whole point? Why is Paul writing this letter again? He sees that there is contention amongst the brothers. He sees, hey, like, you're fixing to have some problems where you'll be tempted to split up and divide yourself. But all of that is based around your own self-honor. Placing yourself above men, and more importantly, You're on the verge of placing yourself above God, but let me remind you what Yeshua did. The one that you want to place yourself above came and put himself below you, took upon your sin, and died for us. Even more serious than the passage in 2 Thessalonians about taking on the role and the mindset of the son of perdition is taking on this role where we think of ourselves as better than Yeshua, the one who humbled himself and came amongst us. And he continues, remember, this is an encouragement to the community of believers. He says, therefore, my dear friends, just as you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but even more in my absence. This is where I get this inkling that they're still together, and he's trying to prevent something from happening. Because he says, you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but even more in my presence, in my absence. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. You may have ever heard that before. I've heard it a lot. And I'll tell you, I've heard it in the context of what I don't think this letter, this chapter, this passage is about. Because usually when I hear this, it's usually someone who's justifying doing something different or justifying walking with God alone, right? You just have to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It doesn't matter what anybody else says or what anybody else does or what. You work out your own. You just go over there and do your own thing, work it out yourself. No. This you here, just as you have always obeyed, work out your own salvation. Everything in this letter from the front to this point is plural. I posted a question this morning before the service. If you understand the your own salvation as plural, does it change the way you view this verse? Paul isn't telling Nate to go work out his own salvation and figure it out himself. Paul's telling Nate, you better be a part of your community and you better figure out how to stay together. Because when you don't, you've dishonored what God put in place and what God intended. He's not telling Nate to go figure it out on his own. He's telling Nate to figure out how to put his own selfish desires aside so that he would humbly serve everyone else. So that he would work out the salvation of his community with fear and trembling. Because what are they working to? What are they supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be living out Exodus 19. Remember that verse, the Segala, where God says, you are my special treasure? That too was plural. Because if we're not together, we don't represent that special treasure. He said, you collectively together, Israel, are my Segala, my special treasure. You collectively, Philippi, the community of God's saints in Philippi, you collectively need to get your act together so that you can bear my image into the rest of the world, so that you can be the priest, the nation of priests that I intended, that I spoke of to your fathers at the base of Mount Sinai. This isn't a personal instruction for you to figure out what you think you should be doing, but a communal instruction to work together and to represent God appropriately. For it is God who is working in you, plural, both to will and to work according to His good purpose. Do everything without grumbling. Anybody ever heard that before? Do everything without grumbling? In the adverse of earlier, I've seen that used individually towards individuals to say, stop grumbling. Like, you're being a nuisance. No. This was to a community who grumbled, and we all do at times. Stop grumbling. Stop arguing. Fulfill the will and do the work according to God's good purpose so that the world will see who God is. 1 Peter says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for His possession, so that you may proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. Again, he's quoting the Old Testament, and he's speaking to a community of people to work together for the goodness of God. to work together for the honor of God, and to work together so that other people will see Him. I was discussing just the other day with another friend. He said he wanted to know, he said, what do you think your purpose is in God, in life? Why did God create you? Why did God place you here? And I said, well, I need to understand what you think is purpose, and what you think, what's the connotation of your question? And it led to this big discussion, because we all have one unifying purpose, right? And that's what Paul was talking about in Philippians. He says, you all have one goal. It's the salvation of God's people. We all have the goal. We all have the mission to go out and share the good news, the gospel, to share who Yeshua is with the world so that God's kingdom will expand and reach every corner of the earth. That's everybody's mission here. It's not mine alone. It's not Nathan's or Layman's. But we all have different roles. Like, my role is the same as yours in leading other people to Christ. But I also have a role of trying to equip the community and joining together with Nathan and Layman and the elders to equip everyone here to go out and do the same exact work. We all have different roles with one goal, right? Military friends can understand that better. Like, not everybody's an infantryman, not everybody's a driver, not everybody's an engineer, right? If we all had one purpose, one role, the kingdom of God would not move forward. But like Paul to the Philippians, we've got to come to a place where we understand. And I'm less speaking to everyone here, right? Because we're all here collectively on Shabbat to come together for God's unified purpose. But to give you an encouragement to share with others so that they would be encouraged to come and be a part of God's family, to come and be a part of serving others and serving God, to come and be a part of honoring God and giving Him the glory of everything that He wants to do through our community and our congregation. We'll pray, and then we'll have questions and answers, and then Jonathan's going to come up. He's going to give honor to God and glory to God for something that He did, not any man, not any person or himself. Father, we come before You this morning. We thank You for Your holy Sabbath. We thank You for the ability to serve You and be a light unto the nation, to be a chosen people, a holy priesthood that comes together on Your holy convocation. I ask that You continue to break down the chains of self-worship and self-honor, or honor of others, and place all of our honor and glory on You. Help us see how to push others towards You and away from us so that they may come to know You, the one healer, shield, strength, redeemer, the one who is the source of all life, so that Your kingdom may expand beyond all measures that this world would try to limit it by. Humble us. Break all pride and sense of self-worth and self-deserving sensations that we may have within us, so that we may serve each other, thinking of everyone in this place better than ourselves, and most importantly, pointing to You as the only one who is worth all of our honor and our glory and our praise and our worship. We love You. We bless You. We give You thanks. Amen. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints? Jonathan's going to come up. If not, he's going to run as fast as possible so that nobody has anything to say.
I come up here today with a true sense of thanksgiving in my heart. I thank God for Matt and Nathan and Layman. I thank Yah for the leadership of this congregation. And I thank Yah for the people who believe in prayer. Everybody knows that at the beginning of the year, I came down with COVID. Does anybody not know that? Everybody, I came down with COVID. And when I came down with COVID, I was hospitalized. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. And the only thing I could think of is that a dear saint gave me a piece of scripture that said, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." And that's the only thing I could think of. I was not feeling well. I was hurting all over. And all I could think of is, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." Well, when I got out from having COVID, when I got out of the hospital, I come to realize that I couldn't do nothing. I was trying to tie fence at my pasture, and I'd get down there to tie a fence, and I'd have to stop. I couldn't breathe. My heart just wouldn't pump. And I went to the doctor, and he looked at me and found out that I had cardiomyopathy developed from the COVID. Now, this time, all I could think is, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." But it's prospering, Lord. I don't understand it. So, as I went through this thing, they started deciding, okay, well, we're going to map your heart. We're going to see what's going on. And they came to a determination that my ejection fraction was only 40%. That's right before heart failure. And that I had a bunch of PVCs going on. PVC, I think it stands for premature ventricular compressions. All obtained in one. You got 4 chambers of your heart, and it was all in one area of my heart, in the ventricle side of my heart. So as everybody knows, I came to Nathan, and Nathan has been faithful. He's been keeping check on me. Every time he knows that I've had a doctor's appointment, he comes and he says, "Okay, what did they say?" So the last time I said, "Nathan, they told me there wasn't nothing they could do for me." My wife was sitting there. The doctor came in and sat down and said, "Jonathan, I hate to tell you, but we can't help you. We can't help you at all with what you got going on. All that we can recommend is for you to go to cardio rehab and try to strengthen your heart, but your PVCs aren't bad enough for us to really map them out." Well, as they were monitoring me at my cardio rehabilitation, my PVCs started getting more and more. So they done a 72-hour monitor on my heart to see exactly when the PVCs were happening. Well, once the results came back, he called me into the doctor's office at my appointment. He said, "Okay, look, 37% of your heartbeats are abnormal heartbeats." Even the nurses and doctors, when they looked at the number, said, "That's an extreme amount of PVCs. That's crazy. We've got to do something to fix you." Well, last month he was telling me there wasn't nothing he could do for me. And I kind of rejoiced. I told Nathan, I'm kind of happy that he said there wasn't nothing he could do, because this is when God's going to show up. This is when God's going to get glory, and that's what I want to happen here today. I don't think it's a mistake that anybody that's in this house, I don't think it's a mistake that you're here today. If you've lifted me up in prayer, you need to hear this, because your voice matters. Your prayers make a difference. I'm standing right here as evidence that your prayers make a difference. So as he called me in, he told me, he said, "Look, you're having this extreme amount of PVCs. We want to do an ablation." I said, "Okay, well what's an ablation?" He said, "We want to go into your heart with 2 probes. We're going to go in through your groin on each side and go into your heart, and we're going to map out the PVCs in your heart, and we're going to kill them. We're going to burn them with an electric shock. We're going to kill those abnormal beats." I said, "Okay." He said, this procedure has a 93% success rate. and after the pain medicine wears off, you'll be able to notice a difference immediately. And I'm thinking, okay, well, God, Father Yah, if this is your will, guide this man's hands. Help him map this out. Help him to find what's wrong and fix it so I can go back to work. That's what I want. I want to go back to work. So as we went for the procedure, I had men texting me, hey, I'm praying for you. And I think I think the Father Yah was hearing the prayers that were going up, because the main essential thing that was being prayed was, Father, don't let them kill my brother's heart. Because that's what they were going to do. They were going to go in and kill parts of my heart. And I think that was the central basis on the prayer. Don't let them go in and kill my brother's heart. So they took me in there, and they got me prepped, and they put me on the gurney, and they rolled me in on the table, and they placed me, IVs, all kinds of patches to map and monitor my heart. They placed me on the table, and they turned everything on, and they got to watching for the PVCs to show up so they could map them out so they'd know exactly where to go. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and there was never a PVC. Never one PVC. So okay, what we're going to do is, they came to me, they said, Jonathan, we're going to give you this cocktail of medicine that's designed to make you have a PVC. So we're going to put it in your IV. We're going to give you a shot of adrenaline. You're going to feel hot on your face. You're going to feel kind of flush. And then this medicine's going to start working, and you're going to start having PVCs so we can go ahead. Now, this was about an hour and a half that they kept me on medicine. An hour and a half on speed, making my heart kind of race. Because when she done it, I felt it. They put the drip on number 1, and it stayed there for a minute, and then all of a sudden, my heart rate started slowing down. They didn't understand it, so they turned it up to number 2. And I kept a same steady plane. My heartbeat never changed. So they said, well, maybe the IV's bad. So they came over and they checked my IV. The IV was great. IV was working. And the doctor, I'm never going to forget it. I was on the table, and I leaned over and looked, and he was sitting there like this in his chair. And I got excited because I knew that he didn't want to hear what I had to say. The Father Yah, the whole purpose. I was laying there, I said, Lord, why did you bring me all of this way? I don't understand. Why couldn't you have healed me a month ago? Because he wanted to obtain the glory. It took Isaac being placed on an altar, and his daddy was fixing to sacrifice him, and the angel had to stay Abraham's hand. So the Father wanted to obtain glory from this situation. Just like we said, when they said there wasn't nothing I could do, I kind of rejoiced. I told Nathan, I know the Father's going to get some glory from this, because they're saying there's nothing they can do. Then all of a sudden they said, okay, we got a good idea, we're going to fix it. We're going to go in and fix it. And then God fixed it before they got there. Nathan Hall's prayer, he said, brother, my prayer was that when you got there, that they wouldn't be able to do the surgery, that God would fix it before the surgery was done. So if y'all would with me today, can we put our hands together and give the Father Yah some praise and some glory for what He's done? I know, I got to. I'm going back to work Monday.
Man, that's awesome. Shabbat shalom.